You're probably not the only language learner out there who has looked around at what everyone else is doing and tried to do what they do. And you don't feel like you trust yourself enough to learn languages in your own way. You feel like you have to copy someone else's routine, exactly what they're doing, in order to get where you want to go. And I'm here to really encourage you in this video that it doesn't have to be like that. In fact, there is a better way to learn languages, in the fact of allowing yourself, giving yourself permission to do it on your own terms. Figuring out what that even means can be tricky as well, especially if we have been in this cycle for even years. We looked out and outsourced our confidence to what everyone else was doing and never looked within ourselves really at all to ask, okay, what do I actually need from my language learning process in order for it to be sustainable for my life, for my needs, whenever we do keep outsourcing and looking at whatever anyone else is doing in their language journey and thinking that everyone is doing it in a better, more right way than us. We also tend to think that there's a lot of shoulds that we have to do in order to get fluent. If we're forcing ourselves to just push through our language learning studies, always grind harder through discipline and just do what we don't want to do without looking inward, without even taking a moment to breathe and reflect, then that will only breed a lot of resentment, some guilt, as well as some shame that shows up on so many language learners' journeys. I have my official permission to not have to follow any sort of shoulds. I'm sure you've had that little voice in your head that's been telling you, you should do this, or you should know this by now. Instead of thinking about shoulds, aka having rules in your language learning that maybe are even unconscious for you, think about what boundaries instead that you want to set. Rules can definitely really stealing the joy out of the learning process, and in turn making it so that even when we get to our goal of fluency, it won't feel as meaningful, because during the whole process of learning, we have been pushing ourselves and berating ourselves and building up a lot of resentment. Rules usually come from the outside of what you see others doing, of what society has sent you messages about that you have then internalized to make up these rules, right? That are actually limiting you. Boundaries, on the other hand, are there to protect you, to help you respect your own energy, your own time, your own full life obligations that you have outside of learning a language, because that is such a common thing that all of us language learners have to deal with as adults, right? We're gonna have life disruptions, we're going to show up on bad days, right? Boundaries can really help us, first of all, slow down and reflect about how are we learning right now that is detrimental to our learning journey, and what can we introduce in order to limit the negative effects of that and start to focus our energy elsewhere on more productive things. I'll give you a personal example of mine. Let's say that you have this unspoken rule to yourself to always have to reach C1 exactly in all 4 skills in a language before you go to the next one. You think that you have to prove yourself, aka in your mind, define it as, okay, I have to reach C1 so everyone knows that I'm that level, and then I can breathe and I'm gonna be a valid language learner. Thinking about languages in that way, thinking about your goals that way, there's nothing wrong with the goal itself. What is limiting and will increase your resentment to language learning over time is that nowhere in that equation have you asked yourself, what do I actually really need? What does my life look like right now? What are my circumstances feeling like? How is my energy showing up? How do I even learn best, right? None of those questions are answered whenever we are just thinking about that goal and we're ruthless about getting to it. Now, when I had this unspoken rule in my head, and once I really sat with that and figured out, hey, is this actually really sustainable and useful and enjoyable for my life? And I figured out that it wasn't any of those 3 things. That is when I decided, okay, I'm gonna put a boundary so that it really helps me save my energy and divert it to something more positive. So that meant only aiming for even around a B1/B2 as a minimum for me to feel good enough to move on to the next language. And that was, as a perfectionist, huge for me. I am naturally a very high achiever, as I believe a lot of language learners are. And I think that's also why we're drawn to this hobby or passion or whatever you want to call it. And at the same time, we have to protect our energy and ourselves. I always love to teach within the Mindful Fluency Method, that is my signature method that I use to coach language learners with, about my 3 principles of language learning. Always make learning useful, sustainable, and enjoyable, all at the same time, because yes, it is possible with any sort of stage or area, but if it isn't all those 3 things, that's when we really need to start paying attention to what we need to modify, aka what we need to set a boundary on, so that we can keep on learning languages, because language learning is truly always worth your time. The way that you carry out that language learning process though, and being able to develop that skill of thinking about your own language learning instead of only just thinking about, okay, how can I conjugate verbs faster, or how can I learn vocabulary faster? That is really what is going to help you understand how you learn best, and then from there help you enjoy the process, make all of your studying count because you know exactly what works for you, and ultimately get you to the fluency that you want faster, because you won't be having so much mental energy spent on all of these rules that you feel like you're supposed to follow because someone else told you to do so, or that's what you internalized from watching other people on social media. The next thing I invite you to give permission to yourself for doing is giving yourself permission to have a focus. We get so overwhelmed in language learning. This might seem like a really broad tip, like, what kind of focus should I actually have at any given time? What I'm really saying here is that prioritization is important so that we can keep things simple in our learning, right? Let's say that you feel very overwhelmed with not being able to speak how you want to in Italian, and you have taken all the notes in your classes. You felt that you have all the resources that you really need, and yet you're still not where you want to be. That's really where prioritizing your focus matters, because if we are focusing on both fluency, on also accuracy, making no mistakes, also on communication and actually putting our ideas together in a logical, coherent way so that other people will understand us, that is so much to put on our brains that are also at the same time trying to construct sentences, remember the vocabulary, remember the word order, etc. We are doing an amazing thing, you guys. So much is happening when we are producing a language. That is why focus is so important. And it doesn't mean that once you choose a focus to prioritize, during speaking, for example, that the other focuses that you could have picked are less important. It just means that we have to have a starting point somewhere. We have to meet ourselves where we are. And once you learn how to meet yourself where you are by choosing your focus, that is when you start to understand, okay, I can do things my own way. I don't have to prioritize, fluency and communication and also accuracy at the same time, like I interpret other people doing. Something that is scary and uncomfortable to do, actually letting go of feeling like you want to do it all, right? You want to have and meet all of these high expectations for yourself, whatever they look like. I understand what it means to have high expectations, but also it is so freeing to be able to really question those, where they come from, and be able to then use prioritizing your focus in order to start to feel like what it means to actually learn your own way. I also want to give you the permission slip to say it is okay to step back just a little bit from your language learning. This can mean a lot of different things in different scenarios for different language learners with different goals, okay? So if you have been burnt out from Italian, but you still have French as dabbling on the side, okay, well maybe you step away from Italian, invest a little bit more time in French because you don't have so much resentment and burnout related to that language, and then use that energy that you get from dabbling in French to then go back to Italian at some point. Maybe you just take a little bit of a break from all of your language learning so you can actually think about how you're thinking about language learning, right? Which is really valuable in the reflection process. And again, getting yourself to understand how you learn best on your own terms. We love to see all of these fast progress stories. And when we see that, it also carries the message of, okay, this person must have never stepped back. They must have never taken a break. I will be the first and foremost to say that when I last year took an intensive course in Turkey as well as Jordan to study Turkish and Arabic respectively, I probably never took much of a break. And it really was not the idealized version of how you think about the language learning process to go. I enjoyed it somewhat, but I didn't enjoy it to the fullest, which made reaching fluency in both of those languages less meaningful to me. It's not always the idealized version of what you see. A lot of it happens in the background. And I, as well this year, have taken a step back from both of those languages actually, so that now I definitely don't perform, speaking especially, at the same level that I did with those intensive courses. But by allowing myself to do so, I was able to really parse out what I'm speaking to you about now, really understanding the meaning of why I engaged that way with those two specific languages, what those languages mean for my life, even though I am at a lower speaking level because I haven't used either of those languages in at least 5 months, I internally feel so much more calm, because when you actually do allow yourself to take a step back, whether it be for a day, a week, a month, a year, from a language or something you're doing in your language learning, a specific activity, that's when you can start to build self-trust with yourself, that you are going to be okay, that you are going to figure it out, that no, you will not just lose your level, right? You've already built that really strong foundation, and going back to it, that is when you can rebuild it, refresh it, however you want on your own timeline, AKA in your own way. And it can feel scary at first, but it is so worth it. It is one of the absolute best lessons that I had to learn in my own personal language learning journey, and also what I coach language learners on to really understand about themselves. What do breaks, what does stepping back look like for you? Have you done it before? And guiding them through actually taking a bit of a step back to see what are the benefits actually of not having to go and pressure yourself and grind all the way through your goals all the time. I am interested in what kind of takeaways you got from this video. Make sure if you did find it helpful to like and subscribe, because it really does help other language learners find me who are in similar places as you. And I do also love to coach language learners as well. So if you're interested in how we could potentially work together, then go to the pinned comment below and book a free discovery call. I'll be waiting for you there. Otherwise, I'll see you in another video very soon.